Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Elle Evans, who's here to share with us the hot new summer read, Wedding Issues, a novel. So just imagine a competition for a Southern Bridal magazine cover unleashes mayhem between two people, forcing a mastermind maid of honor to stop being a people pleaser and start figuring out what she wants in life. The chaos that ensues makes this book one you won't want to put down. So Elle Evans lives in Philadelphia, where she works in healthcare. She's recovering from a recent 5-year stint in Nashville for graduate school, punctuated by sweet Southern hospitality and even sweeter iced tea. So welcome to the show, Elle Evans.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
My goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. So where did the genesis of this book even come from?
Well, Wedding Issues is about, a lot of wedding planning issues. And I wrote it in my mid 20s, which was a time of my life when I was a bridesmaid, I think 4 or 5 times in 2 years. And I also got engaged and married in that time frame. So wedding planning was just a huge, huge part of my life for those years. And I realized how much effort goes into planning a wedding, just how many details and choices there are, and how easy it would be for someone to sabotage things along the way. And I sort of worked backward from that idea and said, okay, now what is a reason someone might want to sabotage someone else's wedding events? And that's sort of how the idea was born.
I can tell you had so much fun writing this because it is a fun book to read. Well, why don't you share just a little bit about the story? We don't do spoilers here, but just a
Of
little bit
course.
about the story with us.
Sure. So, Wedding Issues is about a fast talking law student, Olivia, who becomes maid of honor for two weddings that are competing for a bridal magazine cover, her best friend's wedding and her cousin's wedding. So, things are already complicated enough, but then you throw in a very evil, scheming aunt. An off limits crush on her best friend's brother, and a really intense last year in law school. And it is a very wild ride.
It sounds like a very wild ride. So when you look at this competition, I mean, was that something that you personally saw that happened, or is it something that you kind of just came up with as you were going through your own experiences?
I will say I definitely had no no competition around my own wedding planning, thankfully, because I was, stressed enough without anything like that. I think the competition element really came to me because, like I said, I wanted to write a book, a fun book, I should say, a fun book about wedding sabotage, and I was trying to think of, a pretext that someone would have, or a motivation for wanting to mess up with someone else's bridal shower or bachelorette or things like that, and having brides competing for this magazine cover sort of gave that framing for the story that I wanted to tell. But luckily, no no sabotage and no evil aunts in my life either.
Well, we're always thankful for that. I think when we don't have villains in our own
Yeah,
story.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and so, kind of touching on that, so is there anybody within the story that you've kind of made a character in your book?
Oh, absolutely. One of so the main character Olivia, her best friend is one of the brides competing in this competition. Her best friend is an influencer. She's a designer and trying to get into fashion and works very hard on sort of her online presence. And Olivia feels very defensive about all the people who sort of look down on those sorts of jobs and careers. And I think some of that came from one of my really good friends is actually an influencer. She is a very different, she's a hiking influencer. She is a total badass, has hiked the Appalachian Trail twice, has this whole brand about hiking and like women in the wilderness. It's amazing. She does such a great job. But people sometimes, look down on her because she makes YouTube videos and gets paid for that. And I think she's like the coolest person ever for doing all these things. And so I think I definitely put part of her into the latent character in this book.
Well, I'm sure she's laughing all the way to the bank on that one, you know?
She definitely is.
But I can understand because, people are like, "Well, you should be a 9 to 5 job kind of person," and they don't really understand the world of influencing and what that could look like.
Yeah, well, there's so many jobs out there that, you don't have to be an accountant or, wear a suit and tie to work or work a 9 to 5 for your work to be legitimate. And so that was definitely something that the characters explore in Wedding Issues as well.
So, did you run into any challenges when you were writing this book? Maybe some type of narrative that came up and you're like, ooh, I've got to dive into this.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think one of the I'll try to answer this without giving away too many spoilers. Hopefully, it just makes everyone want to read the book and figure out what I mean. But there are, I will say, sort of two love interests in the book, or two potential love interests, and um, the person that the main character does not end up with. My editors, a lot of people sort of wanted the other outcome. They wanted the other outcome from what I chose, and I was very resistant to changing it because in my own life I had a very similar situation where I made the other choice and it didn't turn out well. I know that's very cryptic, so everyone should go and read the book, read Wedding Issues, and then you'll understand sort of what I mean.
And they'll understand what we're talking about, and I think that that's actually good. I don't wanna talk too much about that, so we
Or
don't wanna do too much of that, but, I mean, you do this beautiful blend of humor and coming of age and bringing that all together. What was that difficult to get those 2 elements to kind of marry throughout the story?
I think yes, and I think another element that you're sort of hinting at is it's there's a concept in books of women's fiction, and what does that mean? It's and I think it's understood sort of as a book about women, but the primary storyline is not necessarily a romance, which is what I would call Wedding Issues for sure. Many people don't like the term women's fiction because we don't have a men's fiction. It's just fiction. It doesn't need to be women's fiction. But I think finding when you're writing in that style and you're writing books, targeted books about women for women, but your primary storyline is not romance, that is you have to be very intentional about sort of how you blend the other elements of the story. And so for me, I knew I wanted to write a wedding book that was not about the love of the two people getting married, really, but about friendship love and self discovery. And so, sort of, I had to think very strategically about how to blend all those things together.
Are there any major themes in the book that you can share with us that doesn't give anything away?
Yeah, I can. There's several. One that comes to mind is the main character Olivia is very, very ambitious and driven, and is sort of gunning for a very competitive lawyer job. She's coming out of law school in the book in her final year, and I think that for a lot of people who identify with that like overachiever, you know, straight A student type archetype, there's a question of, oh, you start to at some point you will take a step back and decide, what do I really want to do with my life? Like, does this academic or work achievement really matter to me as much as I thought, or do my family or my hobbies or my time outside of work mean more? And so I think people kind of wrestle with that question to different extents depending on their job and different stage in life. But that's definitely something that several of the characters in the book are dealing with.
What do you want readers and our listeners to take away from this book?
Oh, I love this question. I hope people close the book with a smile on their face and love in their heart. That's really what I want. I want people to have joy reading this because I had so much joy writing it. And I really want that to be that sort of book that leaves that sort of warm afterglow in your heart when you think about the weddings that you've been to and the weddings you have coming up and all of the loved ones in your own life that you cherish and celebrate. That's really what I want people to take away from it. And then, of course, if they don't live in Nashville, hopefully they're inspired to go visit.
And that sounds like a fun thing to do and of course, be part of your community. We want people to connect with you and learn more
Mhm.
about your work.
Yeah. And if people would love to learn more about me, I have a website that I will say I don't update that much, ellevansbooks.com. But I'm also on Instagram and I do post on there pretty frequently, l.evans.books. So you can follow me for sort of behind the scenes writer content and also to be the first to know about my hopeful next books coming out.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about that. Well, Elle, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Well, thank you, Elle. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Wedding Issues. Wedding Issues is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.